Because I missed the bus, I have to walk to school? So be it. I was reminded by this post about an event that happened when I was far too young to be on my own. I did not expect this to be this long, but writing it has been a little cathartic. TLDR. As a child, I missed the bus. My mother told me to walk the 2-mile route by myself. So I did. Some setup of the scene. This would have been back in the mid-1970s. I was in elementary school. I don't remember what grade, age, but that school was 1st through 3rd, so I was somewhere between 5 and 8 years old, although I remember starting to dislike school because of being bullied by classmates in 2nd grade. Said it was more likely 2nd or 3rd grade. Age 67. I was expected to do my morning routine. Get up, dressed, breakfast, and walk to the bus stop entirely on my own. The bus stop was about 500 feet or 1/10 of a mile away, and around a sharp corner at the end of the route. This meant that while there was a chance I could see the bus go by if I was running late and on my way, but because of the angles involved, there was little chance the driver could see me if I was late, so they wouldn't know to stop and wait for me. I don't remember if I was dragging my feet or just got up late that morning. But by the time I got to the bus stop that morning, it was too late. The bus had come and gone without me. In the past, when this happened, I'd sadly walk back home, tell my mother, and she'd drive me in. But for some reason, this morning, she decided that it wasn't happening. I don't know if she was trying to teach me a lesson or just had enough or what. But she told me that I had to walk. No, she wouldn't be coming with me. A young girl, about 6 or 7, walking about a 2-mile route, alone. I was terrified. There were few sidewalks, mostly just dirt paths worked into the side of the road, if that. Plus, due to elements that I now know are not good for a child to go through. By this time, I definitely had issues doing anything wrong in the eyes of adults around me. So I had this additional fear of anyone seeing me on this walk of shame. So I made sure no one saw me. If I saw any vehicle coming, I'd hide. I couldn't handle the thought of anyone witnessing this. I walked, and walked, and walked. It felt like forever. But I walked the entire way. And I finally got there, and walked into the office to report my tardiness. It turns out that my mother had not intended me to actually do that. She had called the school to have someone come and meet me on the route. Not that she said anything about this to me. The bus driver had gotten back into her bus and drove the route I'd have taken. And then when she didn't see me, she then got into her personal car and did it again and again, trying to find me. Multiple people were sent out to look for me. But again, in my mind, I couldn't allow anyone to see me in this shame. Plus I was old enough to know about stranger danger, and was scared about that. 2. I absolutely was not going to let anyone find me. I think they were actually on the phone to the police when I walked in the office door. As for fallout, I'm sorry, but I can only speculate based on other memories. My mother would have been chastised by the school for not telling me to expect someone to be looking for me to offer a ride. I would then have been punished, yelled at, spanked, grounded, because my mother could never handle being wrong. So it had to be my fault. I don't remember ever having to do it again, though. This sounds more like abused compliance than malicious. That reminds me of when my dad told me to get out of the car in the middle of nowhere because he was mad at me. He would always drive a bit down the road as well. I think one time I started to walk away because I thought he abandoned me. So here is this kid, no more than 5, walking the opposite direction of his parents' car. Oh, by the way, I am adopted. I guess I know where my abandonment issues come from. I am finding it interesting the 2 different attitudes prevailing here. Walking alone for 2 miles at 5 years old? That's nothing. Versus Walking alone for 2 miles at 5 years old? That's abuse. Looking back at other things as well, I'm inclined to the latter. Myself. It wasn't a safe walk. That's for sure. I don't consider this MC on my part, but there was one day when I was in 2nd grade. This was in 1975, where I was expected to take the bus home. I most likely forgot about this and instead waited for my mom to pick me up. After waiting for about 20 minutes, I decided to walk home. Home was outside the city limits, about 5 miles from my school. I had paid enough attention during drives from home into town that I knew the way pretty well. It took about 2 hours to get home. One of the older kids in my neighborhood spotted me as I was coming to our driveway. He said, "Your mom's out looking for you." When he said that, I figured she wasn't home. But I did see my dad's truck at the house. As it turned out, Mom was home, and apparently she had called the school thinking maybe I'd gotten on the wrong bus. When I didn't turn up on any of the buses, they got the sheriff's department involved thinking maybe I had been abducted. On the other hand, she was impressed that I knew how to get home on my own. I still remember her recounting this to one of her friends and saying, "When I saw him at the front door, I didn't know whether to hug him or beat him." Edit. Typo. She pretended it was your fault? Weak parenting. This happened to me too. Maybe closer to 9 years old. But my parents told me before I headed to the bus stop, maybe 0.5 miles from our house, that if I missed the bus to not come home and expect a ride. So I walked. Also maybe 2 miles or so. I was speed walking because I was so worried I would be late. When I reached the crossing guard, he told me to relax, slow down, and breathe. My friend's mom found out and felt so bad for me that I should have called her. My parents later seemed to feel bad, but I wonder if my friend's mom shamed them a bit. I think I saw the same post earlier and I thought of this instance. Unfortunately, not the last time my parents let me down. But parenting styles in the 80s were a lot different. I can totally relate. I was a latchkey kid in kindergarten. 1980. Had to catch the bus by myself too. The only issue was we lived in the middle of nowhere. The school was about 10 miles away. So one day I missed the bus. I was so scared and freaked out that I was going to get in trouble for missing the bus that I flagged a car down and asked for a ride to school. Luckily it was a lady, and she took me to school. Totally scary now looking back. But I was more terrified of getting in trouble with my mom and her new husband for missing the bus and school than I was of a total stranger giving me a ride. Nothing malicious, more like afraid compliance. I'm so sorry. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and we walked all over the place. Got lost, kept walking, and eventually walked to a place we knew. And we did multiple mile hikes with our son when he was that age. It's not the distance I'm sorry about. It's your mother's attitude that disappoints me. She wanted to put you in a situation that felt unsafe. And that's a terrible thing for a parent to do, even if it was intended to be for a short while. I get that doing this as a punishment of sorts could be scary for a 56-year-old. But as a 56-year-old myself, I used to save my 5p bus ticket money to spend on cola bombs and walk to and from school every day, which was a couple of miles each way. This wasn't atypical. When I was in kindergarten, 1972, my sitter refused to walk me the 2 miles to school. I set out on my own. Along the way I saw a backhoe digging a hole. Needless to say, that was where I stopped. Fascinated by the digging, I think I got to school maybe 2 hours late. Boy did I get in trouble. Though I don't think it was all my fault. I just remember being told not to do that again. Then we moved. And that was the last I saw of that sitter. She never walked me to school or got me home. I always did it on my own. Different times? I do get to say. Living in Massachusetts at the time, I got to walk uphill in the snow to school. Unfortunately, I could go both ways uphill because that's not how hills work. Boomer parents back then didn't give a F. I'm surprised any of us Jenksers made it out alive. This is really sad. It is not just stranger danger. A young kid could have been hit by a car, or turn at the wrong street and get lost for hours, or get a heat stroke if it is summer, or hypothermia if it is winter. I am glad you got to school safely. I had practically the same thing happen to me in the 80s. My mom told me to ride my bike after I missed the bus. So I did, but I only knew the route that the bus took to get to school. So I bicycled the entire bus route, which took forever. I was sweaty as heck when I finally got to school. I had a similar experience in 3rd grade. I was forced to attend a rather uptight and often cruel Christian school, complete with a wooden paddle like a baseball bat with a shovel blade used for giving swats. Our teacher told me to leave the classroom one day for talking in class. As I was walking out the door, she announced she didn't want me in her class anymore. She was my only teacher. So I started walking home. I made it about half of the roughly 4-mile walk home when my mom pulled up. The school noticed me missing, went into a tizzy trying to find me, and called my mom. The teacher claimed that what she said was, "I don't want you in my class anymore if you're going to behave like that," but claimed the door had closed behind me halfway through the sentence. I still remember my crime, which was telling a guy behind me to stop talking to me during class. Apparently I was the one chosen to make an example of, and waking home was my way of protesting the injustice of it. I'm sure I'd probably irritated her on other occasions. I was a child, after all, and they tend to be somewhat intolerable. I grew up in the 70s. Started kindergarten in 1970. And I'm surprised the bus driver even went looking for you. We used to walk to school and no one cared. Like you, we got ourselves up, dressed, made our own breakfast, bowl of cereal, and walked to school. I'm surprised our generation made it out alive. Unintentionally malicious compliance. It's funny how growing up in the 70s, 80s was so different than it is now regarding what's considered child abuse. I started going to school in 1958 when I was 5, and walked to and from kindergarten a mile away. When I graduated, I went to a different school that was 3/4 mile further away. Yay, there was a bus I could take, but you had to have a pass and 3 cents, or it was a nickel if you didn't have or forgot your pass. I only took the bus when it rained, mostly because the big kids like to pick on little guys like me. This is horrible. My parents made me walk to school, 3/4 mile, age 57, and I was assaulted twice in 3 years by men who stopped and picked me up, literally, and put me in their cars. Police caught the second one, but the first got away with it. This was mid-70s. Predators have always been around, and making a child that young walk alone is dangerous. How many kids have to die before adults actually act like adults?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.